Today on CityCast Austin, did y'all know that plans to reopen 6th Street to traffic have been in the works for years? But it took the new police chief to get things started, and now a pilot program is underway. I'm here with some experts on 6th Street to get the scoop. It's Monday, February 10th. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, I am here today with Mike DeBonville, owner and operator of Marlowe, Hannah Rangel, who's vice president of Built Environment with Downtown Austin Alliance, and Bill Bryce, who's senior vice president of investor relations with Downtown Austin Alliance. What's up, y'all? Hi. How are you?
Hi. Good morning.
Hey, Nikki.
So off top, I'm going to just get into it. I want to hear each of you finish this sentence. In the future, 6th Street will be Austin's blank. Bill, you go first.
Vibrant, day and nighttime draw for families, people of all ages, shopping, dining, entertaining, and representing the brand of Austin's live music.
Oh, I love that. You threw in families. We're going to have to come back to that. Hannah, you're next?
Yeah, very similar. Representing the brand of Austin, bringing back the brand of Austin, a place where different people can do different things, different activities, different times a day, a place for everyone.
Okay, Mike, what about you?
The crown jewel and true gateway to the city of Austin.
Ooh, I like that. So you mentioned the brand. What do you consider Austin's brand? I'm really curious.
I'll take a stab at that. We have placed a lot of pride and a lot of marketing into Austin being the live music capital of the world. And a lot of people come and visit and want to see that expressed on 6th Street and on Red River. And we certainly have those assets, and that's something that exists today. But I think we can be offering a lot more and a lot more rich experience on 6th Street.
Okay. Okay, Bill, what about you?
Well, I think in addition to live music, 6th Street in and of itself represents the brand, certainly of downtown, if not Austin as a whole. And we know that people from all over, when they come to Austin, some come here to Austin to experience 6th Street. The experience on the street itself is not always as favorable, particularly when people come to 6th Street during the daytime. And I've helped many tourists find their way around downtown who say, well, is this 6th Street? And when I say, yes, you've arrived, the look on their face, particularly in the daytime, is one of disappointment, really is kind of disbelief, not realizing what the area is like. Now, granted, at nighttime, when things light up and start happening, the tone's a lot different, but especially during the daytime, we think there could be a lot of improvement in terms of the experience of the street and the brand that 6th Street in and of itself represents.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Austin's very, I'd say like a relaxed place that local, businesses really have shined through probably over the last few decades. I think that brand can continue to evolve and really mature. So the edges aren't as rough, and a place where, people can enjoy a good time together in a relaxed, but, nice environment any time of the day.
So like late 1989, 6th Street was closed to vehicular traffic on the weekends, right? And it was like, 6th Street doesn't even start existing until nighttime, after nightfall. Mm-hmm. Tell me, from your perspective, what has 6th Street meant to Austin?
I've been in Austin more than 21 years, arrived in 2003, I've been with the Downtown Austin Alliance since day one here. 6th Street, has always been a place that people seek out, a place where people go to entertain. But what we've seen over the years, particularly in light of the fact that you mentioned that the street has been shut down to vehicular traffic on weekends, is that it becomes a street party at night. We've realized for many, many years that there are a lot of underage people on the street that are there for the street party, not necessarily to patronize businesses, but we also know many people who are underage are getting into bars and consuming. We also recognize that Austin as a whole is a safe city. Downtown is reflective of that. But also over time, 6th Street has become a place where we know has the highest concentration of crime, particularly violent crime, of anywhere in the city. And I know that you interviewed Chief Davis, and she talked about data-driven policing. And so we know, too, that the majority of that happens Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and even Sunday nights, but also between midnight and 3 a.m. And a lot of that is due to the street party atmosphere that's grown out there. And so trying to change that paradigm, trying to correct course, trying to make the district a place that's safe, but also unique and open to everyone during different times of day for different uses is really important.
Okay. Mike, I'm curious about your lens because you've done a bunch of stuff.
Sure, yeah. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, so I'm a lifelong Texan. I've lived down here for about 15 years. But in my travels, around the world, if you go to like South America or Europe, like these are very nighttime driven, right? Like you go out, you eat late dinner at night, 10 p.m., you're out till 5, 6 a.m. America's not like that. We have an interesting dynamic here where people will go out to, midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. With their friends, and then they're in CrossFit at 8 a.m. It's kind of wild. So there's just a really, I think, daytime desire, and that helps these businesses. There's more hours in the day to catch revenue. You can only make so much money in 4 hours.
Okay. Y'all might be converting me. Okay. What about you? What about you?
It struck me that you mentioned 1989, that the street closure started. It's like we have generations of Austinites that know this to be the status quo on 6th Street. So it's a big change that we're talking about reopening the street. But, in the past decade, we've grown downtown's residential population. There are 10,000 people living downtown now. And in the 80s and 90s, that wasn't the case, right? We come downtown to work, we come downtown to party,
Right.
but we're in a really different place now with our downtown population. And I think that there are folks that could be patronizing establishments, breakfast, lunch, and dinner throughout the day that are living and working in downtown. That wasn't the case, a decade ago.
You actually bring up a really good point for me. It's so funny because the way that all of you are talking about 6th Street, the first thing in my head is like 36, like my 36. And then just the idea that is what it's called, 36, like that is the status quo. I don't know why I feel so attached to that. Like, this is where all the magic happens. When in actuality, there have definitely been times where I've been there where I have felt unsafe. There's definitely been times where I'm like, this person does not look like they should be out here because they're 12 or 13 or 14. I was also that underage person walking down after hours. I think the reason why I'm feeling so protective of this 36 idea is because for some reason, it feels like something's being taken away instead of looking at it as, oh, look at how all of these ways that we can help the city and change the city as it's changing and help the city as it's growing. Have you guys run into any of that when you've been talking about like changing things and things moving forward? Or is this just like a few of us diehards? It's like, you get Project 36 from my cold dead fingers. Like,
No, I think people have big feelings about 6th Street because everybody's had their night on 6th Street, right? And when we talk about evolving the district, I believe it's an additive evolution. It's not a whole scale renovation or redevelopment, right? Like I hate to use that word, like it's an icky word, but we're talking about evolving the district into its next era. And I believe firmly that includes all of the elements of 6th Street that we all kind of know and love. At the same time, I think that the quote status quo is not serving the community in ways that it maybe was, in previous decades. I think the brand of Austin was really thrived on 6th Street for many, many years, but it's hard to look at the conditions of the street today. And, Bill's anecdote, Bill spends a lot of time on the street downtown. I can verify that. And he's had these encounters where people are kind of like, this is 6th Street, and we want to bring that back. We want to bring that pride back, and I don't think that means losing a lot of what we all love and the brand that we all know.
Right. And Mike, I gotta be honest, I'm surprised. It's surprising to me to hear a bar owner be like, yep, we should do this so that we can open. I mean, you're right. Like, there's only so much you can do in 4 hours. I completely agree with you. But I don't know why. It's just surprising me that you're seemingly on board. Can you give me like a little bit of an idea of why? I don't have a better way to ask that question. I'm just surprised.
Austin historically has been a college town and a hippie town. And I think people are scared of that changing too much. And all of us on this phone, there's so many things that we don't want to see go away, like Eeyore's birthday, for example. There's so many little traditions and small cultures that we don't want to go away. But, I think we have to be realistic and understand that Austin is not just a college town and hippie town anymore. We're a tech center. Our industries are expanding, right? Austin has always been young, and is still young. Now those young people are having kids, me included. And when you have kids, you want to go out during the day. So I think, that can play a role in it, and I think like it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to, be concerned that concepts from all around the world or from Miami or Chicago or New York are coming here. Like they can come play in the sandbox, but all of us locals should also create an evolving product for the city today that's still authentic to Austin, and uses Austin artists and, still takes those values into account. But it's just different than it was in the 80s, for example. So
that makes sense. During the pandemic, I took a walk down 36 because I was seeing things on the internet and on the news, and I was like, this is the most depressing shit I've ever seen in my life. And I just wanted to see it for myself. And I honestly, to be frank, wasn't sure that 6th Street would survive the pandemic. And so let's talk a little bit about how the pandemic affected 6th Street and what the transition to getting back going was like. Bill, I'm guessing that you probably have like the most firsthand knowledge.
Most all of the businesses, at least temporarily, closed on 6th Street during COVID. Many of those have not recovered fully. Some have gone away completely. That was also a time period where a lot of properties changed hands in terms of their ownership. Those properties are being completely renovated to attract new tenants, but new tenants are also hesitant to consider leasing on a street, especially if it's a use that's different than a bar. For a restaurant to consider coming to the street where they don't have nearby valet or the ability for people to get to their door, it's difficult for them to consider that. The moniker Dirty Sixth in and of itself, you raised this question a few minutes ago, that's not necessarily something that's positive, and we feel it's really important to change the way that people view and think about the street. That being said, we're not trying to create an entirely shiny new district here. It's important to note that the largest concentration of historic properties anywhere in the state of Texas is in the 7 blocks of East 6th Street. This district could be very unique and very different than anywhere else in Austin and anywhere else in the state. And so creating something, embracing the brand, embracing, its origin and its roots, I think is really important. And we're still evolving, coming out of COVID, where a lot of the properties are in transition, being re-tenanted. But those challenges are steep at these times, especially when the street's closed and you have the types of issues that we do in terms of crime happening down there.
Another thing that, I think everybody experienced post-COVID is that people's behaviors are changing a little bit. People don't go out as much anymore. People save up for large experience events. Younger folks aren't drinking as much as they used to. So again, it's kind of like the things that were working for us may not be working as well anymore. And so I have to admit, like Mike, I'm in a different era of my life and I have young kids. And so I do want a place to go to during the day, but it's like coming out of COVID, people really kind of arrived in different places in their life and their behaviors have changed permanently. And we should be responsive to that.
Yeah, I like that. I've always said that I have aged out of 6th Street. I've just aged out of it. I don't go there anymore because it's like the minute I get there, I'm like, oh, nope, God, no. But then I see, like, in preparation for this interview, I looked up photos of Marlowe and I'm like, oh, that's somewhere where I would actually kick it and I would actually like put on my cute little outfit and have a cocktail, right? And I think I've just always thought of it as like you go and then you age out and then the next crop comes and that is what keeps it alive. But it sounds like what you're seeing is that overall the city is just changing. We're just trying to adjust and keep up and then also make it accessible for more people.
I think that's right. And, some of my opinion is informed by conversations with folks at the Red River Cultural District and that they're seeing a real change in people's behaviors and how they go out and what they do. So I tend to agree with you. Like, you age out and then that person just backfills in the bar spot right behind you. But
yeah,
but I
exactly.
And they don't get hangovers yet. And they're so lucky,
So young. They're so young.
They're so young. They're so lucky. But we are seeing that that's not necessarily happening the same way that it used to. So it requires a different approach.
Wow. There's no place like Texas, except when it comes to skiing. We know you're heading to seek snowier pastures this winter. Before you leave, grab one last taste of the real Texas in Amarillo. Hike, ride, or roll your way through the beauty of Palo Duro Canyon, the second largest canyon in the U.S., while your legs still feel fresh. Carbo load with that last taste of glorious Tex-Mex before you pivot to warm soups and chalet charcuterie. Or sneak into a speakeasy and enjoy a well-crafted cocktail before those shot skis get passed around. Amarillo is quirky and wild, Western, and spontaneous. You can spray paint a Cadillac, cruise Route 66, or find a cowgirl hat to complete the outfit that's been missing something. Whether we catch you on the way there or the way back, we can't wait to hear your stories and pour you a drink. The mountains may be calling, but Amarillo will make you proud to call Texas home. Visit Amarillo and après-ski into the real Texas. So 2014, we had that terrible incident where a driver plowed through barricades on Red River near 6th and killed 4 people. And then 2021, there were several violent incidents on 6th Street, including the shooting in July that killed someone and then injured a bunch of others. And I just remember the first thing that went through my head was like, this doesn't happen here. Like it was just this very clear, like clutching my pearl shock. Like that's not what we do here. Even though that space, I have aged out of that space feels like a sacred space to the city to me. I want to talk a little bit about specifically the shooting, but just like how these events have changed things down on 6th. What are you seeing down there in response to these kind of really big, awful things that have happened within the last few years? What are y'all seeing?
First of all, Austin's a big city. I mean, I know it still feels, and thankfully it still feels like a small town. But we are a big city, and we're not immune to events and issues like those you've described.
True that. Yeah.
Back in 2021 and 2014 from happening. And I think that those events in and of themselves and others call for us to explore opportunities as far as how to manage the street differently and how to manage it more safely. You know, talking with Chief Davis about this in particular, but also the Public Works and Transportation Department, having thousands and thousands of people in the roadway on any given Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday night presents a target for someone that has malintent to focus on. In her own words, we're trying to remove that target, manage the street differently, facilitate enough public pedestrian space, I should say, where people have room to walk but are encouraged to go inside, not linger in the street, but also to implement some different safety devices and management techniques to prevent vehicles from entering public spaces like 6th Street and like what we saw happen, unfortunately, in New Orleans, January 1st. And so I think all of those things spell the need for change. And I think that the police department, in cooperation with Public Works and Transportation, Nightlife and Entertainment District, our Downtown Austin Alliance and 6th Street Austin, as well as a lot of businesses, are supporting testing it in ways that don't cost a lot of money, that we can learn from this approach. We could tweak it along the way through the course of the pilot. You know, during the pilot, if this police department determines at any given time the crowds are too large or for any other reason the roadway needs to be shut down, they can do that very, very quickly. They will soon have new equipment that helps protect people and prevent cars, for example, from entering areas where they should not be, much improved over what they have out there today. And so this experiment, again, will help inform ways that we can better manage the district moving forward.
Mike, Hannah, do either of you have any want to weigh in?
Our probably highest density of police officers with a street shutdown is on 6th Street, right? And what are they doing, right? They're babysitting, essentially. And it's like, is that what we want them to do? Or, you know, do we want them at the areas that we need, like that actually need help, right? Because if these folks, you know, are in establishments, well, I have security and my bartenders know not to overserve, and, you know, we're protecting our patrons. Like, Nikki, when you come to Marlow, like, you're not going to feel unsafe inside. Like, it is almost like a protective spot where, like, no one feels unsafe in there. And
that's awesome.
Then you have a business interest to keep it safe.
You know, the idea to reopen the street has been talked about for a while. It's not something that just sort of was thought of, you know, recently. And when Chief Davis came on board with fresh eyes and looked at the resourcing that goes towards 6th Street in the context of a resource-constrained environment in terms of APD staffing, it brought a whole new lens to it in terms of, right-sizing the response, right? And it may not be about the volume of officers on the ground. It's about the right officers on the ground in the right place at the right time. So I think that we are really lucky in having a new police chief that is coming in with fresh eyes and is able to kind of see it for what it is and not maybe just the way that we're accustomed to it existing. I guess the other comment I want to make is, I guess the concept of opening the street, again, was set in motion some time ago, or was starting to be discussed some time ago. The events of New Orleans on January 1st caused, a very serious pause in those efforts. And then I think it really illuminated the idea that, no, we actually have a very dangerous target right now, the way that we operate this district. Yeah. And by reducing volume in the street, we are making it a safer place. So it's a little counterintuitive when we talk about reintroducing cars into a district, but we really are talking about eliminating that intensity of target and that high density of people on the street to make it a safer place in the long run.
You bring up a good point. Let's talk about that, because I think that there's a misunderstanding. For sure there was for me, that this came out of nowhere. But what I'm hearing is that there have been rumblings talking about reopening this street for a while. Do we know, what was going on behind the scenes? How was this coming about?
So a little bit of historic perspective on that, Nikki. There have been a number of attempts to test reopening the street over many years' time. However, none has involved the detailed planning and interdepartmental planning and also the planning involving other organizations such as ourselves, East 6th Street Association, as well as many business and property owners. The attempts to open the street in the past included, let's just try to keep the cross streets open. Let's try to open a section of the street with cross streets. But I think the lack of having other departments involved, a really well thought out sort of phased approach to try some things incrementally, led to what the police perceive to be a lack of safety, because so many people get into the street, they've got to shut it down, and then those plans get shelved. And I think clearly a safer environment is needed. And I think, the disproportionate amount of police resources that are in 6th Street every weekend night, disproportionate amount of use of force arrests, all of these things indicate the need for change, especially in an understaffed, under-resourced police department. We've got to be more efficient. We've got to create a safer environment that's there for all to enjoy.
Just to add to that, you mentioned the shooting in 2021, and coming out of that was the Safer 6th Street initiative. A resolution was passed by council that included cameras and lighting. There was an effort which has been executed on in terms of educating owners and operators on safe serving and everything else. And then, interestingly, they cited a diversity of uses as something that would help the district be more successful and safer. And the public space design included discussion on deepening sidewalks, which would imply that reopening of the street.
At the end of the day, why is this change so scary? You can always go back if it doesn't work out, and or what about even making it a treat that these streets are closed? Why do we love South by so much? Because we can hang out on the streets and go venue to venue. Why do we like Pecan Street so much? Well, why don't we add some more things during the day or whatever it might be, where we close down the street and then it becomes a nice treat for us to enjoy other than just have every day of the week,
Mike, you bring up so you opened Marlowe Bar in 2023. What attracted you to own this bar on 6th Street? And, now we're talking post 2021 and Safe Streets initiative. They're talking about all this stuff. But what was the vibe like there? Then what was the thing that made you be yep, this is the place. This is where I want to open my bar?
I was looking for places with soul. I think in Austin, one of the things we probably all don't like is all of the buildings are glass. And I think there's great to have balance, but
yeah.
Why do we appreciate Montreal? Why do we appreciate New Orleans? And it's because these are the most beautiful architectural, Chicago, these buildings, you can't recreate that stuff. So, I really wanted to breathe new life into an old space and, show that, hey, we can have old things and we can update them, but we can still celebrate them. And that's really what I was looking for holistically. But, to be completely honest, I wouldn't have opened up a bar down here if I didn't know about all the projects that were coming. I knew about the street opening up. I knew about Stream. I knew about the Waterloo Greenway. I knew about the I-35 project. I knew about the convention center. I knew about all of the condos being built. I'm really excited about the future. My upside for sure is in the future on that when they all come. But, if Marlowe wants to be an institution, we got to be the first one to be the change we want to see.
I love that. So now going back to reopening the street to vehicles, can you tell me more about how that would make the street safer?
It's about improving the infrastructure. It's about improving the mix of uses, the one dimensionality of the district, mostly bars, people trying to drive their business from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. 4 nights a week is very difficult. They're going to try and sell as much alcohol product as they can in that short time rather than having 18 hours a day, 7 days a week to generate revenue and create a district that's more vibrant and has different uses. And so it's not just any one thing. It's not just reopening the street. It's what other factors need to happen in conjunction with testing new approaches to how the public space is managed, and how does all that inform a plan and a design going forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's not like we open up the street and we're like, all right, problem solved. I always think, in business, especially small business, it's not like football where you got to get a first down in 4 downs. Yeah. Business is just about forward progress. So some days it's an inch, some days, it's a yard, some days it's a 40-yard, but it's just about getting forward progress. So, this is just a piece to the puzzle that helps solve the overall problem. And I don't think anyone is, foolish that thinks like, okay, hey, look, we open up the street, we're solving the problems. Like, I need friends to be successful long-term, right. Especially in Austin, right? Like, we don't go to one spot on a day and night. We like to go to 2, 3, 4, right? That's the culture here. So in order for that to be like a night out, a day out, you need some friends. And that's what ultimately, creates a vibrant area to thrive. So
now I want to talk Stream Realty, because developers, it's just like a hot topic, right? Anytime there's talk of development, we get a little antsy. Mike, it really made me feel good to hear what you were saying about keeping the character of the buildings downtown and, just recognizing that it is historic and it's beautiful and just trying to refurbish and not demolish. So 6th Street is a historic district. It's been an entertainment district, like we said before, since like the 1970s. And Stream Realty's senior vice president of investment management even said that the goal is return it to be Austin's signature downtown neighborhood. And so I am curious how y'all think Stream Realty's involvement will affect things on 6th Street, because I'm automatically going to like, oh God, no, please do not demolish anything. Please don't put any more glass on 6th Street. My brain is going to this fear of this like sanitized version of entertainment. So I'm curious what each of you think about their involvement. Hannah, what about you?
I think it's healthy to have a little ambivalence with developers, although I will, in full disclosure, I'm a recovering developer myself. So
no,
I know. So maybe I'm a little less skeptical than some, but maybe it's helpful because I can see kind of both sides of the aisle on this. I think that the city has an incredible opportunity with Stream. Part of what has happened on 6th Street is that we've had, yes, there are some folks that own a lot of 6th Street, but for the most part, it's been really diverse ownership. And it's been a lot of, focusing on your own operation. And it's been hard for folks to come together because people are just focused on their own operation and maybe are not seeing what it could be. We've talked about that this can be the crown jewel, the historic assets alone lend itself to that, but we don't have an ownership population that is interested in working together. And so I think that with Stream, the city actually has a really incredible opportunity because there's consolidated ownership along the street where we can sort of invest public resources into the street, and private investment will meet that in a new way. Our understanding is that their business plan is to, renovate in a historic manner. They've already gotten all their approvals, and then re-tenant these locations so that there should not be a ton of heartburn around what other plans may be. They did at a certain point, I guess, back in 22, 23, there were plans that included sort of, additional height and mixed use and hotel. And those are not on the table now. The entitlements are there, but the business plan does not reflect that. And so their goal of re-tenanting really meets the city's own goals of a diversity of uses because they want top tier restaurant operators, cafes, bars, restaurants. And that diversity of use brings us to sort of that safer place for the district. Did I alleviate your fears at all?
Listen, yes, you did, actually. If we're keeping it a buck. Yes, you did.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Bill, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, Stream Realty is a great company. They have become a majority owner on East 6th Street over the last several years. Actually, during and post-COVID, they've taken ownership of a number of properties, a number of historic properties on the street. And it's really important, I think, to acknowledge the fact that, one, their redesigned plans for 6th Street or the properties that they own certainly respect the history, the relevance of 6th Street to Austin, Austin's brand. And it's important not only to downtown, but the city as a whole. I think it's important to mention, they are not alone in terms of having a long-term vision for the viability of East 6th Street and what it could be in the future, longer term. It's not a short-term deal that they are in this for. It's the long-term. And I think that they share this with a number of operators on the street, property and business owners, and I think are really helping to provide some impetus, much needed impetus, to get the ball moving in the right direction, kind of unifying voices around the street more than we have seen in the past. So I think that it's positive. It is a time right now, however, as we've discussed earlier in this conversation, where they are renovating many of the properties that they now own in order to re-tenant them, but in order to re-tenant them not just with another bar that's open from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. Different uses, restaurants and other types of businesses, bringing back live music more than we have today and really focusing on what's in the best long-term health and viability of 6th Street for downtown and the city as a whole.
Okay, what about you, Mike?
We're located at 700 East 6th Street. So the highest density of buildings that Stream owns is surrounding us. That comes with risk and comes with upside. But I think, historic landmarks can't be taken down.
Yeah.
I think people might get fearful of, what's happened to Rainey over the years. And, I don't blame the building owners on Rainey. They got a deal they couldn't refuse that could, help their families for generations. But I don't think you can really do that over here. So I think if you came to Marlowe and saw how we celebrated the history, I don't think anyone would say we didn't respect it and that it wasn't a good thing. So I think it's all about execution, but I'm very hopeful and very supportive of what they're doing and the momentum that's headed in that direction.
So lastly, I want to ask each of you, is there anything else that you'd like to add about 6th Street, either that I didn't ask you about or that you feel like the public just maybe has a misconception about that we haven't covered?
I had one thing I wanted to cover, yes. It's sort of apropos of nothing, but we've talked about the idea that the reopening of 6th Street has been in motion for some time and been contemplated for some time. At the same time, I don't want us broadly to assume that it's a foregone conclusion, because it's not. And I think I really applaud the city for taking the initiative to try something, really investing in it and doing it right. This is a pilot. APD is gathering data, sort of crime-related data to see sort of what changes for better or worse. The city is going to be tracking liquor sales to see what changes. Either there are enhanced sales because people are in the bars, or there's less people on the street, so there's, the sales are down. We shall see. And then they have a survey out to owners and operators along 6th Street to get more qualitative feedback. And that's currently out circulating amongst owners. So the city, from our view, is actually doing this in a thoughtful way, and we shall see the results.
Nice. Thanks for that reminder, because I forgot until you said it again. What about you, Bill?
I think that one of the things that's interesting to think about is 5 years from now, when our convention center is reopening, and when more of the Waterloo Greenway has been redeveloped, we've got I-35 underway and the potential for new green space caps and stitches on the highway that change the entire landscape and the way that downtown looks and feels and operates. What's 6th Street going to look like in 5 years? Is it going to look the same as it looks now or in 10 years? We have a real opportunity to change the paradigm on 6th Street in a way that is good for everyone, good for business, good for the community, and one that when everything starts to come back in terms of convention groups and other projects coming to fruition, I'd love to see people look at 6th Street and say, wow, look at this compared to what it used to be. We have Congress Avenue changing and all these other things happening. I think 6th Street certainly cannot be ignored in terms of what it should look like and how it could be facing the future to be part of this really dynamic and vibrant downtown Austin that continues to evolve as a whole, and 6th Street needs to evolve along with it.
That part. That's awesome. What about you, Mike?
I kind of think in just more of a short and sweet way on this one. And it's that everything goes full circle. And it's okay for us to try some things on this portion of the city. I think we all want more activity down there because we all, when we first came to Austin or when we come of age to, go downtown, it was the first place we went to. And I don't know if that's the case today.
Oh, shit. That's a good point.
I think it's okay to experiment, to try things and to evolve.
That was spoken like a true dad. The reassuring, it's okay. You're going to be fine.
I got one last one for you, which is that I want you to consider stopping using the phrase dirty sixth. I know it will always be that in your heart, but it is, it's about sort of we're talking perceptions here. And it's like how we perpetuate a concept is like, I don't mean to thought either. I just
listen, let me tell you something. Baby steps. I'm going to try real hard. I'll try for you. I'll try real hard because when I went into this interview, I was very skeptical. And after this conversation, this is really giving me something to think about and it's changing my mind a little bit. Now, whether or not I can stop calling it Dirty Six, old habits. It's gonna take at least a couple of months.
All right. Well, next time I see you, we'll find out.
next time you see me. Yeah, for sure. So, okay. Thank y'all for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're all very, very busy. Thank you for answering all my very nosy questions. I will absolutely be going to Marlowe because it looks cute as hell in there. It looks like my vibe. Thanks for all your expertise. Thank you for being here. I'm sure I will be calling on you again to ask you more questions.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to the Downtown Austin Alliance and Marlowe Bar in our show notes. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.